Hey guys, welcome to this course. Now in this video, let's take a look at the logic of components, wires and scripts in Grasshopper. So in the previous video, you might have done something like this. You might have created two addition components, one by dragging in from the math tab, and under operators you might have clicked on addition and you might have put one addition component over here. And the second way that you might have bought the other addition component is you might have double clicked on the canvas and you might have typed addition and brought this addition component over here. So these were the two ways that we had discussed in the last video regarding how to bring in components inside Grasshopper. Now let's understand the logic of these components. Let's understand what components are, what they constitute of, and how do you join one component to another to create a simple result or a simple output either in your Rhino window or in the Grasshopper window itself. So for now, if you have created something like this, you can select both of them like this. I'll just repeat this once again so you can understand it clearly. You have to click and you have to drag and select it from the right to the left. You can also do the same from the left to the right and both of them will be selected. Once you select them, they'll turn green like this. So I should remind you once again, if I click outside, you see how these components turn gray. And if you select them, they'll turn green. If you select them one by one, you have to hold on to shift to select multiple components. So if you hold on to shift and if you select another one, then you can select two or more components at the same time. Once you have selected them, just press delete and delete the components. Now let's try to understand what components are and how do they work using your Grasshopper interface. The first thing that we'll do in Grasshopper is we will create a line using 2 points. So the first thing that I want you to do is you can double click on the canvas and type point. So if you type point, you can see a lot of components like this. So the first component that you might come across is this one, which says point, and below the point, if you keep your mouse long enough on the icon or on the result that you have after searching, you might see that it tells you contains a collection of 3-dimensional points. Now after you read this description of the component, you make sure that this is the component that you are searching for. Take a look at its icon and click on it and bring it inside your canvas. So this is the component that you actually want. Now you can double click and type point once again and bring in the same component once again, just like this. Now if you had actually wanted to copy this component one more time, you can just select the component. After you select it, it will turn green like this. And after you select it, you can click on it and press Alt and then drag like this to copy. I'll repeat it once again. You have to click on the component, turn it into green. Do not leave your mouse. Continue pressing on your left mouse button. And after you have pressed on it, you can press Alt. And once you press Alt, you can see that there is a small icon near your mouse. And you can just drag and copy. So this is how you copy a component multiple times. So for now, we only need 2-point components. So you can go ahead and delete these two additional components. So once you have 2-point components, now we can actually reference 2 points from Rhino inside Grasshopper and create a line using those 2 points. So to reference a geometry from inside Rhino inside Grasshopper, you can just click on the component first, make sure it turns green. Green indicates that you have selected the particular component. Now if you place your mouse on the top of the component, you see it tells you contains a collection of 3-dimensional points, and below that it tells you empty point parameter, which means that this component does not have any data right now. You have to input a data inside this particular point. So how do you input a data inside a component? Either connect it to an input. This is the input and this is the output. Okay. So before we go ahead and reference anything inside this component, let's understand the construct of a component that you have inside Grasshopper. So any component that you bring in, it will always have one or multiple inputs. Now this is the input part. The left side is always the input and it might have one or multiple outputs. The right side is your output. So you will always have multiple inputs or multiple outputs, or one input and one output. Depends on what the component does. And you will also have a component icon like this. Now if you want to have the name of the component instead of this particular icon, what you can actually do is you can go to display and you have these 3 options right here: draw icons, draw fancy wires and draw full names. You can turn off draw icons and then you see you have the name of the component. Now if I also turn off draw full names, then I have a shortcut name of the component, which is an abbreviation of the word point. Now you can also turn them on and do a mix and match of these things to create the kind of component that you want or the kind of component that you are comfortable with. So for now, I'll just keep it like this. Make sure you notice this particular settings, that you have draw icons, draw fancy wires, and draw full names turned on. So now that we clearly understand the construct of a component, of any component, literally in Grasshopper, now let's reference data inside this point and start working with it. So now what I want you to do is click on this point component once, and it will turn green. Once it turns green, you need to do a right click on this icon right here. Once you right click on the icon right here, you see you have the name of the component and you have a whole lot of options. Now we'll actually get into the details of what all these options do in due time, but for now you can just click on select one point or set one point option over here. You click on set one point, your Grasshopper window will minimize and your Rhino window will open up, and you can actually set a random point on your screen. So say I set a random point over here. Now you see you have actually set point inside your Rhino window, and this component has turned into a light gray color or a white color from an orange color. And the point that you have set inside your Rhino window has a denotion of a red cross, which is a vector point. The more you zoom out, the bigger the point gets, and the more you zoom in, the smaller the point gets. And if you select this point component right now, you see that this thing turns green and a gumball tool appears. That's because this particular option was turned on, which was gumballs under display. So now that is clear, we have seen how to reference a point from Rhino inside Grasshopper. Now you could have easily created a point inside Rhino and then you could have referenced it inside Grasshopper. Now let's try to do that and see how it looks like. So over here in the Rhino window, make sure you click on it once to activate it. Then you click on the small point icon which says single point, and you create a random point over here. Now after you have created a point in Rhino, let's reference this inside Grasshopper now. So to reference this inside Grasshopper, you can select on your point component, turn it green from orange, and you can right click on the point icon, click on set one point, and you can select this point component and reference it. So in this case, if you see, if I click on this point component, I am not getting the gumball. That is because the point that I have selected is there inside Rhino itself. So if you want to get the gumball option, you have to click on the point inside Rhino to get the gumball icon. So for now, if you click on this particular point and delete it, you see the component turns back to orange and it gives you a small balloon-like icon over here. So this is basically this particular tool which says message balloons. It's a canvas widget which says message balloons, and it will actually tell you the error that this component is facing. So if you click on this balloon, you see it will tell you a referenced point could not be found in the Rhino document. So this is basically a denotion of when a component is actually working or when a component is not working. So you need to understand, whenever you select a component, it will turn green. Whenever a component is working, will show you in a white color with whatever logo is in the center of that component. If a component is not working or if it has some kind of an error, it will actually either turn orange like this or it might turn completely red. So in this case, I have an orange component. So let's fix this. You can click on the component, turn it to green, do a right click, click on set one point and click on the screen, and you have set another point on the screen using these 2 point components. Now what we can do is we can go ahead and connect these 2 point components to a line component to create a line. So let's double click on the screen and let us type line. You see you have a lot of line options, but the one that we need is this particular one which says create a line between 2 points. Make sure you notice the icon and make sure this is the description of the component that you are selecting. Select on this component, and once you select it, you will have this kind of a component. Make sure these are the settings in display. These settings are all turned on. If these settings are turned on, your component will look exactly like this. Now you can also notice that it has a small error over here which says input parameter start point failed to collect data. Input parameter endpoint failed to collect data. That is because a line is made up of a start point and an end point. We have the start and end points over here which are referenced right here. Using these 2 points, we have to create a point. We have to input this inside start point and input this inside end point. Now let's understand the logic. Now you see we don't have any inputs over here. You can go ahead and easily input a point over here through a wire, but we have directly referenced the point from inside Rhino. So we have outputs. So we have an output from here. So now if you keep your mouse icon on the output, you see it actually tells you one locally defined value, and then below that you have 3 coordinates. Now we should know that every point has 3 coordinates: the x coordinate, the y coordinate, and the z coordinate. You see that the x coordinate is minus 36 something in my case, the y coordinate is 17 point something in my case, and the z coordinate is 0, because all of these points are on the xy plane, or on this ground plane that you might know it as. And if I pan it a little bit, you see it does not have any height. I have not given it any z-axis value. That is why if I place my mouse over here, you see it actually tells me that the z-axis value is 0. And I have the same thing over here also. This particular point also has a z-axis value of 0. Now what happens if you want to create a line using these 2 points? You have to connect the start point to the start point and end point to the end point. Now your start point might be either this or this, doesn't matter. Your end point also might be one of these. It really does not matter, but you have to connect one point to the start point and another one to the end point to create a line. So in order to create a line, you have to connect it through wires. Now let's understand the logic of wires. You should know that only an output wire can connect to an input wire. That is the only logic you need to remember. So you cannot connect an input to an input or an output to an output. Only an output can be connected to an input. So in this case, I have the output as this point right here, and this particular component has the output as this point. So let's connect one point to start point. So you have to move your mouse towards this small bump that you have. If you move your arrow to this small bump, you see you have a small arrow which comes out of your mouse arrow. You have to click and you have to drag your mouse like this. Once you drag, you see you have this small arrow with a dashed line. You have to plug it inside start point and leave it. You have to do the same for the other one. You have to click on it, drag it, plug it, and leave it. Once you do that, you see this particular component, it tells us it took 24 milliseconds to run, and it's completely white right now. That's because it is working. So we have connected a point to the start point, we have connected another point to the end point, we have created a line. And this particular output, which actually tells you line segment, it actually tells you one locally defined value. Below that you see you have a line, and you have L, and you have a semicolon, and after that you have the length of the line in millimeters. So you also have to remember that Grasshopper works on whatever units are there in Rhino. So for now I have the Rhino units as millimeters, so that's why the Grasshopper also has an unit of millimeters. So this is the basic logic that I have used to create a line. I have the start point and the end point, and I have created a line using these 2 points. Now the advantage of parametric scripting or visual scripting is that when I change this particular location of the point right now, if I click on this component, I'll have this gumball tool appear over here. Now if I change the location of this point, the line stays, or the line does not break up, it stays as it is. Now you can actually click on any of these point components. So say you click on this and activate it, make sure it turns green. Now inside your Rhino window, go ahead and move any of these points and see how the line reacts. So as you can see, the line does not break down, it stays as it is. If I also move my point in the z-axis, the line is completely intact. That is because I have created a small script, a small logic, which tells me that no matter what, a line will be created between these 2 points right here. So if you can also notice that if I'm selecting this line component, it also turns green. So whichever geometry that you have created, if you select it in Grasshopper, the component will turn green, and this particular geometry will also turn green in your Rhino viewport. So using this basic logic, I have created a line, and I have created a line using these 2 particular points. So based on what you select and what you move, your line will completely stay intact. That is because according to the logic of the script that we have created, there has to be a line between these 2 points. Now we can also do the same logic, we can also create a same script using another 2 point components, but this time let's not reference anything inside from the Rhino window, let's create it completely inside Grasshopper. So what we can do over here is you can double click and type construct point. So you have this particular component which says construct a point from x, y, z coordinates. You can click on this and bring this in, and you can select it and copy it as I had explained earlier. So now you see, using this component you can actually construct a point inside your Grasshopper window. So let's understand how to create another line segment using these two components in Grasshopper in the next video.